Alright guys, I'll be calculating the average percentage difference between a hockey player's height, weight, and BMI to see which existing Pokemon best matches with the associated player. The data for the Pokemon sizes were collected with Pokemon Database, and the data for the hockey players came from Hockey Reference. Let's start with Wayne Gretzky, otherwise known as the Great One. Easily the greatest hockey player to ever step on the ice. He stands at 6 foot tall, weighing 185 pounds, and has a BMI value of 26.3. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Incineroar, which had a height similarity of 98.5%, weight similarity of 99%, and BMI similarity of 97%, for an overall similarity score of 98.03%, just fractions ahead of Araquanid and Dragalge. Up next is Sidney Crosby, known as Sid the Kid, and the next one is a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, 8-time All-Star, and 2-time Hart and 2-time MVP. He stands at 5'11", weighing 200 pounds, and has a BMI value of 27.8. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Cleaver, which had a height similarity of 100%, weight similarity of 98%, and BMI similarity of 99%, for an overall similarity score of 99%. The next closest Pokemon is Okidagi and Sharpedo. Up next is Alexander Ovechkin, the Great 8, who has the record for most goals scored in NHL history. This makes him a 9-time Rocket Richard Trophy winner, alongside being a 12-time All-Star and Stanley Cup champion. He stands at 6'3", weighing 238 pounds, and has a BMI value of 29.6. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Garbodor, which had a height similarity of 100%, weight similarity of 99.5%, and BMI similarity of 99.5%, for an overall similarity score of 99.7%. The next closest Pokemon is Urshifu and Golisopod. Up next is Connor McDavid, the Chosen One. He is viewed as the current best player in the league, who is a 7-time All-Star and 3-time MVP. He stands at 6'1", weighing 194 pounds, and has a BMI value of 25.4. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Espathra, which had a height similarity of 97.5%, weight similarity of 97.5%, and BMI similarity of 98%, for an overall similarity score of 97.7%. The next closest Pokemon are Sawsbuck and Incineroar. Up next is Zdeno Chara, the tallest player to ever step on the ice. He stands at 6'9", weighing 250 pounds, and has a BMI value of 26.6. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Golisopod, which had a height similarity of 97%, weight similarity of 95%, and BMI similarity of 98.5%, for an overall similarity score of 96.9%. The next closest Pokemon are Exeggutor and Kingambit. Up next is Roy Waters, the shortest player to ever step on the ice. He stands at 5'3", weighing 135 pounds, and has a BMI value of 23.8. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Cerulege, which had a height similarity of 100%, weight similarity of 98.5%, and BMI similarity of 98.5%, for an overall similarity score of 99%. The next closest Pokemon are Cyclizar and Runerigus. Up next is Derek Boogaard, the heaviest player to ever step on the ice. He stands at 6'7", weighing 265 pounds, and has a BMI value of 29.7. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Kingambit and Exeggutor, which had a height similarity of 99.5%, weight similarity of 100%, and BMI similarity of 99%, for an overall similarity score of 99.4%. The next closest Pokemon is Mewtwo. Up next is Jaromir Jagr, the ageless wonder, who was able to play an entire 82-game season at the age of 44, alongside being an 8-time All-Star and 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He stands at 6'3", weighing 230 pounds, and has a BMI value of 28.8. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Urshifu, which had a height similarity of 100%, weight similarity of 99.5%, and BMI similarity of 99%, for an overall similarity score of 99.5%. The next closest Pokemon is Garbodor and Golisopod. These are other notable NHL players who also has their closest Pokemon comparison be Urshifu. Up next is Austin Matthews, the only active player that has a chance to break the NHL goal record. He is a 3-time Rocket Richard winner and 2-time All-Star. He stands at 6'3", weighing 217 pounds, and has a BMI value of 27.1. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Garchomp, which had a height similarity of 100%, weight similarity of 96.5%, and BMI similarity of 97%, for an overall similarity score of 97.8%. The next closest Pokemon are Sawsbuck and Urshifu. Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton also has their closest Pokemon comparison be Garchomp. Up next is Marc-Andre Fleury, a 3-time Stanley Cup champion alongside being a Vezina Trophy winner, which is a reward that goes to the best goalkeeper in the league. He stands at 6'2", weighing 185 pounds, and has a BMI value of 23.5. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Espathra, which had a height similarity of 99%, weight similarity of 93%, and BMI similarity of 94%, for an overall similarity score of 95.39%. Just fractions ahead of Galarian Slowking and Incineroar. Up next is Bobby Orr, one of the greatest defensemen in NHL history. 9-time All-Star, he was also a 9-time All-Star, 8-time Norris Trophy winner, and 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He stands at 6 foot tall, weighing 197 pounds, and has a BMI value of 26.6. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Sharpedo, which had a height similarity of 98.5%, weight similarity of 99.5%, and BMI similarity of 97%, for an overall similarity score of 98.3%. The next closest Pokemon is Cleaver and Dodrio. Nathan McKinnon also has its closest Pokemon comparison be Sharpedo. Up next is Sergei Bobrovsky, one of the best active NHL goaltender in the playoffs, winning the Vezina Trophy twice as well as being a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He stands at 6'2", weighing 180 pounds, and has a BMI value of 22.9. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Crobat, which had a height similarity of 95.5%, weight similarity of 91.5%, and BMI similarity of 99%, for an overall similarity score of 95.423%. Just fractions ahead of Galarian Slowking and Dragulge. Up next is Patrick Kane, 4-time All-Star, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, and an MVP. He stands at 5'10", weighing 177 pounds, and has a BMI value of 25.2. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Dragulge, which had a height similarity of 99%, weight similarity of 98.5%, and BMI similarity of 100%, for an overall similarity score of 99.1%. The next closest Pokemon is Araquanid and Galarian Slowking. Up next is Connor Hellebuyck, probably the best active goaltender in the regular season. He is a 4-time All-Star and 3-time Vezina Trophy winner. He stands at 6'4", weighing 207 pounds, and has a BMI value of 25. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Sawsbuck, which had a height similarity of 98.5%, weight similarity of 98.5%, and BMI similarity of 97.5%, for an overall similarity score of 98.2%. The next closest Pokemon is Espathra and Garchomp. Up next is Brett Hull, 3-time All-Star, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and an MVP. He stands at 5'11", weighing 203 pounds, and has a BMI value of 28.4. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Okidagi, which had a height similarity of 100%, weight similarity of 100%, and BMI similarity of 100%, for an overall similarity score of 100%. The next closest Pokemon is Hydrapple and Cleaver. And finally is Mark Messier, nicknamed the Captain. He is a 5-time All-Star, 2-time MVP, and 6-time Stanley Cup champion. He stands at 6'1", weighing 210 pounds, and has a BMI value of 27.8. The Pokemon with the closest size comparison is Hydrapple, which had a height similarity of 97.5%, weight similarity of 97.5%, and BMI similarity of 97%, for an overall similarity score of 97.22%. The next closest Pokemon is Okidagi and Wordier. Gordie Howe also has its closest Pokemon comparison be Hydrapple. Also, in my opinion, hockey is the hardest sport to play out of all 4 American sports, but that's because I don't know how to skate, and yeah, that's about it.